After nearly a year of waiting, we finally got some more news for Reanimal, the new game from Tailor Studios, including a 13-minute gameplay demo and a new trailer released a couple weeks before. So today we're going to be looking at both of them, and I thought it would be kind of fun to break them down by the monsters that appear in them, and also not gonna lie, it makes for a great clickbait title. Sorry guys. During the THQ Nordic event, a live stream by the Austrian game publisher Nordic Games, a second trailer for Reanimal was revealed, showing off new gameplay and a more detailed look at the various characters and monsters in the game. And a few weeks later, Tailor released this gameplay clip showing off the first section of the game. So let's take a look at every monster and character shown in these two. The first monster we are shown is the lamb, noticeably more mutated and grotesque than the lamb seen in the first trailer for Reanimal, as the antlers growing out of the creature at awkward and painful looking angles appear to be much bigger, some of them looking like they are jointed and acting as legs. This shot does also lend credence to the popular theory that this lamb creature eventually mutates into the faceless mole creature who featured much more prominently in the last trailer. These antlers turned legs eventually continuing to mutate into the many limbs of this thing. This guy, however, is only very briefly shown in this trailer, climbing down after the children from a large pile of rocks in a stage of the game that seems to be centered around some sort of mining facility, judging by the minecarts, as well as the fact that the shot shown here can also be seen in its full context from the gameplay clip that was shown a few months back. Towards the end of the trailer, we are also shown a continuation of this shot, where the lamb is bathed in a sinister red light and appears to be biting the head off of a human-ish man, with the lamb's head snapping unnaturally around as a loud crunch is heard. We can also see many other bodies lying around the lamb that are present in both this shot as well as the one earlier in the trailer. The implication possibly being that this is how the lamb creature grows and further mutates before it eventually turns into the other larger monster seen throughout the game by eating the flesh of others. This other shot is also interesting because it shows the lamb seemingly escaping some sort of containment, hence the red lights everywhere, with men barely alive crawling on the ground wearing the same type of hats seen on the corpses in the shot of the lamb biting a man's head off. The possible implication being here that the lamb was either an experiment being contained in this facility, or a monster that mutated on its own somehow and was captured to be observed. Either way, I believe that what we are being shown here is definitely the lamb escaping, with it first killing its captors and then breaking out of the place where it's kept, the rubble, fires, and broken walls being caused by it breaking loose. Next, we gotta talk about this guy, the Thin Man-esque grotesque character with a disturbing smile on his face, who is rumored to be called the Tailor, although I couldn't find any official source saying as much, but much of the community does seem to call him that. This guy was seen in the first trailer a few times, walking into a cinema dragging a body behind him and crawling across this table. He also features very heavily in the 13-minute gameplay clip, meaning that he will be the first threat that the children come up against, with him appearing after the two leave this first section of the game, which seems to be some sort of industrial factory-like setting, and end up in what is maybe a railway house of some kind. And this demo clip actually confirms something that was speculated about for quite a while, that the Tailor is the one who makes these living skin creatures, the hollowed out bodies of people on the island, hollow men if you will, and it is shown that he does this by using his ability to contort and bend his body in impossible ways to climb inside the bodies of the victims and hollow them out from the inside, Ennard style, like he does in this scene in the bathroom to a corpse with a hole born through his chest, and what looks to be his guts lying in a pile nearby. We can also see what looks to be a rotting, hollowed out corpse draped over one of the bathroom stalls, with the two children finding yet another one clogging a toilet with a key that they will need to unlock a door. Throughout the next scenes, we are shown many more of these hollow men, all throughout another room in the rail house where they are hung from the rafters like clothing and filling up shelves along with many other items. One of them being a wheel that the children need to finish a hand car to progress to the next scene, which triggers a bunch of the hollow men to attack, playing one of the scenes that we actually briefly saw in the first trailer. All of this, of course, to drill in the idea that the Tailor is in fact the one responsible for creating these creatures. And the whole concept of this character actually reminds me a lot of the craftsman from Very Little Nightmares, the man who would capture children and turn their skin into dolls for the Pretender, which was actually the subject of my very first Little Nightmares theory video all the way back in 2019 when I was still a squeaker. Anyway, The two end up in a train yard and enter one of these old train cars, where there are, naturally, a bunch more Hollow Men before the Tailor eventually catches up to them and a chase ensues. The Tailor being the creator of these Hollow Men is also something that is heavily hinted at in the second Reanimal trailer, like in the scene where he is standing in what looks to be a flooded laundromat and appears to be using dryers to burn the bodies of corpses, as we can see what looks like numerous water-damaged corpses draped over the washing machines, with the Tailor holding his hand over something steaming behind him as a sizzling sound is heard. It should also be noted that the way he contorts his body is similar to this creature seen on a bike from the last trailer, which, although clearly have different faces and character designs, do share a lot of visual similarities. And this ability to move one's body in such unnatural ways could perhaps indicate that they're a similar type of mutated human monster. Also, the name the Tailor is obviously, of course, referencing this guy's proclivity to literally hollow people out and make them into skin suits, the same way an actual tailor would make clothing from fabric and thread. And we do see this guy a few more times in the trailer, like this shadowy figure shutting a garage door in this more industrial section of the game, which appears to have the same outfit, body shape, and contorted neck as the Tailor, with the Hollow Man right next to him. This shot is also found at the beginning of the gameplay clip. We also get a quick shot of the two kids running out of the cinema, likely after their encounter with the Tailor, shown in the last trailer, and finally a shot of the two kids running him over with what appears to be an ice cream truck, judging by the silhouette on top of it. And this very likely happens during the same sequence of the game that the 13-minute clip is a part of, as it seems like we can see the same ice cream truck in the rail yard during that clip. Notice the similar silhouette on top of the truck, as well as the fact that it seems to be the only vehicle in the area that is functional, as indicated by its working headlights, which also draws the player's attention to it. Now, the Tailor definitely survives this encounter, as all of the other scenes in the trailer with the Tailor that we discussed very obviously happen much later in the game, including a shot of the children running from more Hollow Men in a forested area. And it would also be kind of silly to spoil the death of one of your major antagonists in the trailer. Okay, so next up are these stone people, who can be seen quite a few times throughout the second trailer. And there seems to be two types of these. Children, which we can see running after the siblings here in this shot, or the siblings again attacking them with crowbars in the next shot, with little rocky chunks of them breaking off. Or other variants of them in that first older gameplay clip I mentioned earlier, which we can see chasing after the siblings here, and actually come from the mole creature, and adults, like these guys tumbling out of a partially submerged school bus, grasping after the children in their boat, with the girl in the rabbit mask throwing what looks to be a harpoon at one of them, which along with the crowbar means that there's going to be quite a few weapons to choose from in this game, and attack the smaller enemies, that will likely just be items that we find lying around, similar to combat in Little Nightmares 2. And these stone adults also do look pretty similar to the water-damaged corpses that we see throughout the first trailer. Okay, now let's talk about the other children we've seen so far. Besides Rabbit Girl and Bag Boy, who for some reason has a bird beak in the 13-minute gameplay clip, which he doesn't possess in any of the other footage from the game in these trailers, so perhaps this is a collectible costume or something. Anyway, we know from the description of the game that a big part of Reanimal is going to be Rabbit Girl and Bag Boy, who again are brother and sister, rescuing their missing friends. And this is something that we can already see the two attempting to do in the gameplay clip. The two encounter a third child behind a sewer grate, who says, "You came back. I knew you would. You should leave while you still can," before disappearing, implying that the children were somehow split up at one point, who they chase after through an abandoned train car which leads them to the rail yard that we talked about earlier, before finally catching up with him again during the chase with the Tailor that ends the clip, with the three walking over a train car into some abyss that seems to lead into a forest, judging by the silhouettes of what looks like trees in the background. So it seems that much of this game will revolve around finding these three other children, as we can see the 5 of them together in several shots from this trailer, with this bucket-headed kid, or 5 of them in their boat, with this enormous ship nearby. Now it also seems that the kids will be split up at many points throughout the game, as the encounter with the third kid is again in the first 10 minutes of the game, but there are also plenty of shots from both trailers where it is once again just the 2 of them that clearly happen much later in the game. So whether or not we actually end up rescuing these kids, or which kids get rescued at which point in the game, may very well be one of the more non-linear story tree type elements that was promised for this game. And speaking of the story, let's talk about that a bit, because so much of the nature of this world is told through the environments. I mean, the title of the trailer itself gives us a clue. what happens after the flood, implying that whatever happened to this world, at least in part, was caused by a flood. And if the story of Reanimal is less metaphorical than that of Little Nightmares, and the mutant animals and humans seen throughout the game are in fact anomalies and not just the way adults look in the world, then perhaps it was the flood that allowed these creatures to break loose from wherever they were being held, or was somehow the thing that mutated them in the first place. And this does seem to be somewhat indicated by the environments, where not only is there water everywhere, as seen with many shots of the two in the boat in places where they definitely shouldn't need one, but also tons of areas that seem to have damage to them that wasn't just caused by the natural weathering of time, like broken gates, sewer grates, ramps, or holes in the floor that seem jagged, like something broke through, or this similar hole in some sort of piece of metal factory equipment from the gameplay clip, which the two have to make stop rotating to advance to the next section of the game. This sort of damage may be caused by the mole creature we see causing similar sorts of destruction. It is also entirely possible that the scenes of all 5 children united together are flashbacks, as one of the more emphasized shots in the trailer is the 5 of them taking cover from a rainstorm by a bus stop, which is the only time that we see it raining during any of these trailers, possibly meaning that this is a flashback from during the flood, and the other shots of them together is them trying to grapple with the immediate after effects of said flood, like finding this abandoned ship or dealing with the mutant animals first escaping captivity. Oh yeah, also, one last thing. At the very beginning of the game, when the children wake up on a beach, they are next to suitcases, one of which contains a key and 2 pictures inside. A clear callback to the first Little Nightmares game, where 6 wakes up inside a suitcase also with 2 pictures inside. Okay, finally, let's briefly touch on the collector's edition of the game, which I'm talking about not because Reanimal sponsored me, I wish they did, but because it comes with some stuff that I think can further hint towards the game's story. Like a poster which shows a map, presumably of the world we're going to be exploring, which in it we can crudely make out many of the sections of the game we've seen so far. Like the island at the top left of the screen, which is likely where the game starts, as it shows 2 children fishing, one being the same child who the siblings chased at the end of the demo. Then there's this forested island on the bottom left, which depicts a crudely drawn figure of a man with misshapen limbs and a long nose, who is probably the Tailor. And of course, by these jagged rocky cliffs, which are probably this area from the trailer, there's this huge crocodile thing, which many have guessed to be this creature from the first trailer because of its similar face shape, who I originally suspected to be the mole. And this enormous rocky area, which may be where the mole lives, judging by its tendency to burrow underground, and the footage of it being seen in some sort of mine area. Finally, there's this island, with a bunch of broken down houses, as well as what looks like one of the other children. Apart from that, there's some stickers which just look to show more concept art for the various monsters and characters, figures of the pig and one of the kids, who, in keeping with the vague names of the Little Nightmares characters, is just named Bucket, and of course, the art book, some of which can be seen in the image of the collector's edition, showcasing concepts for the kids and an environment depicting a child holding a flashlight up to a tree where a body can be seen hanging. And I will be finding a way to get that art book somehow, by any means necessary, okay? You guys don't even understand the way I fiend for concept art. So that's the Reanimal video. A month and a half late. You know, I'm really not sure why this video in particular took me so long to make. Like, I recorded this one August 27th, like a week after the trailer came out, and then I just didn't feel like finishing it for like a month and a half. I've never like been this demotivated to work on a video in like my whole decade of doing this. I don't know why I felt so burnt out on this one in particular, but I just had like this really weird mental block about getting it done. And I was able to put out other videos in the time that this one was just sitting half finished in the editing software. But it's done now and no one's gonna watch it, because I've learned if you don't get these videos out within 5 days at the absolute max of some news on a game, there's really just no point in making it at all. But this one is half done anyway, so whatever. Oh yeah, next video will probably be really long. I'm hoping to get that out in like 2 weeks, maybe, realistically. So stay tuned for that. Goodbye.